I must be losing my mind.
I guarantee you are losing your mind if you are still listening to this podcast. Today the boys are discussing Kipling's The Mark of the Beast. Spoiler warning for this 132-year-old story. Also mature content warning, and please be aware that today's topics include racism, imperialism and colonialism. Lots of isms.
Your gods and my gods. Do you or I know which are the stronger? Native proverb.
Kratos is stronger.
Thassa. East of Suez, some hold. The direct control of Providence ceases. Man being there handed over to the power of the gods and devils of Asia, and the Church of England, Providence only exercising an occasional and modified supervision in the case of Englishmen. This theory accounts for some of the more unnecessary horrors of life in India. It may be stretched to explain my story. Welcome to episode 13 of The Horror of Babylon. Today we are discussing Rudyard Kipling's The Mark of the Beast. I'm Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
Welcome to the show. So it's Friday the 25th, but we're recording on a Friday and we're doing episode 13. So can we call this an unofficial Friday the 13th?
Yes, I count it. I sanction this.
Okay, great. We are going to kick it off by talking a little bit about our author, as we like to do. This is our first not-American author. Everybody else we've done is from the US of A. I think so. King.
Yeah.
Koontz.
Yeah.
In London. Yeah, okay. And of course, he's British. He was born in 1865, died in 1936. He was born in India. His parents worked there, and this, of course, was at the time where India was a British colony. He's best known for The Jungle Book, Rikki Tikki Tavi, and the Just So stories, which are the children's stories he wrote, like How Did the Leopard Get Its Spots and such. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature. In fact, he was the first British person to ever win the Nobel Prize for Literature. And he turned down a knighthood, and he turned down becoming the United Kingdom Poet Laureate.
Why?
I don't know, because I guess he was, what do you call it? A hipster? Hipster of his time?
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I would take a knighthood if one was offered to me.
You know by the Constitution that Americans can't hold royal titles in other countries, or in any country.
I'd give up my citizenship to be a lord, and then I could be an official Jedi Knight.
His wife stated Kipling felt he could do his work better without it.
Okay.
Okay. Here's a list of people from Wikipedia who have turned down a knighthood. Stephen Hawking, David Bowie.
I mean, like, does everyone hate the royal family as much as I do? Is that what's going on here? Because this is a long list.
I don't hate them, I just don't understand why they're a thing anymore. T.E. Lawrence did. That's awesome. What a badass.
Every day their heads are not on pikes, they should be thanking the lucky stars.
And Peter O'Toole. T.E. Lawrence and Peter O'Toole both turned down knighthoods.
They're better than me. I'd take the knighthood.
Maybe Peter O'Toole didn't because T.E. Lawrence didn't. He's like, well, I got famous from playing him in a movie. I probably shouldn't.
Yeah, I can't do it now.
Yeah. Okay, we should probably go back to our topic.
Yeah. It was a fun sidetrack, though.
Yeah, that was fun. He died of a hemorrhage of the small intestine. During his time, he was highly successful. He was a very recognized author. He wasn't one of these artists who wasn't famous in their time. However, as a modern author, he's kind of considered to be somewhat of a racist. His books show a very pro-imperialistic view, kind of romanticizes colonialism in India particularly, which obviously he's considered a very controversial author, which, you know, that totally makes sense. Very similar to one of your favorites, H.P. Lovecraft. I think it's okay to say that, yes, he was definitely somewhat of a racist, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't write a good story that we could appreciate in modern times.
I think there's this modern propensity to have to annotate everything with, but we have to acknowledge he was a racist.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like, yeah, it's more annoying with Kipling. I don't hear it as often, mostly because I didn't realize he had written all these books that I've read.
He is one of the most prolific authors of all. His bibliography is huge.
Yeah, so, you know, like, I love Ricky Tikki Tavi. But, like, when it comes to Lovecraft, I'm like, everybody knows he's a racist. Do we have to add that annotation every time he comes up when we're trying to talk about a book or a story? I think it's more apt to bring it up when it's someone that doesn't get it brought up about them as much.
I care more about it if it's a modern author, as opposed to somebody who's been dead for 100 years.
Yeah, like H.P. Lovecraft, he doesn't make any money from any of his stories. He doesn't have an estate. Trying to tear down, and that might not be what everyone's trying to do, but that's the feeling I get when it comes up in conversation.
Right.
When you're trying to do that, I'm like, you're not gaining anything from doing it. And there are people who try to reclaim the stories of Lovecraft by, like, modernizing them. And I'll go ahead and I'll say it outright. All of those adaptations have been trash, every single one that I've seen. Now, when it comes to, like, accusations of Kipling and racism, that might be a little bit more apt because imperialism is still a very, very hot topic. I prefer to just talk about the works, but sometimes it can't be avoided. I guess I'm just sick of hearing about it, being as big of a Lovecraft fan as I am. Like, it's what always comes up out of people's mouth first.
It's hard to not talk about it with Kipling because
it's ingrained in a lot of his stories.
Yeah, I mean, he was born and raised in India as, you know, a white male being brought up around poor Indians and probably being told, you know, we're part of Great Britain, we're part of the Church of England, probably being told we're better than them and they're part of our colony. And
you get some stuff like that with Lovecraft too. Like, it creeps up in his stories. I don't think it creeps up as much as some people try to say it does. There are some really bad examples, and when we get to them, I'll show you.
Yeah, we're definitely going to read some Lovecraft at some point, and I'm excited. And
this guy, like Ricky Tikki Tavi, when I read that as a kid, you know, you don't think about it. When I think about it today, I'm kind of like, is the manga supposed to be like the English because it's protecting the English? And
yeah, there's a lot of symbolism, especially in this story, and we'll get to that, where some characters are supposed to symbolize Great Britain and some characters are supposed to symbolize India, and the way they interact is sort of a commentary on how the two countries interact.
Yeah.
And Kipling's views lean more pro-imperialism because, I mean, that's the society he lived in.
Yeah.
And a lot of his stories, most of his famous stories, take place in India, so of course these themes are going to come up. But yeah, let's keep going. We're going to talk more about these things as they come up. We're going to start by doing a quick summary of the story, and I just have to ask, we're going to kick this off, what is the stupidest thing a friend of yours has ever done while drunk? Like, when you're out, you're drinking, one of your friends gets way too drunk and does something absolutely stupid.
Do you want me to be honest?
Yes.
Okay, get banned from DoorDash.
That was not. There's no. Ha. Okay, second stupidest thing.
Second stupidest thing?
Yeah. Try to fuck a deer.
Yeah, but we didn't end up on a registry because of that. We did just run around a trailer park half naked chasing deer because we thought it was... I like that we didn't communicate that. We just both kind of decided, hey, we see deer, let's go chase them around.
Walk into traffic in Boston. That was real dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost died, so...
Yell curse words at random people on the street in Boston just to see what they do.
Was that me or you?
It was me.
Oh, I couldn't remember which one of us did that.
Okay, so this is about British people living in India during the colonization of India. And it opens with a New Year's Eve party where they get massively drunk.
They're British, so it was probably a lot.
It was a super lot.
I know that me and you can barely handle 6 beers now.
So one of our main characters, Fleet, this is the quotation about how much he drank. Fleet began the night with sherry and biters, drank champagne steadily up to dessert, then raw, rasping Capri with all the strength of whiskey, took Benedictine with his coffee, 4 or 5 whiskeys and sodas to improve his pool strokes, beer and bones at 2:30, winding up with old brandy. Consequently, when he came out at 3:30 in the morning into 14 degrees of frost, he was very angry with his horse and coughing and tried to leapfrog onto the saddle. Can you imagine trying to leapfrog onto a horse?
I can imagine it. I can't imagine it going well.
Can you imagine trying to do it sober, let alone while trying to do it drunk?
We should try to replicate this.
No. Okay. So all these British dudes get super drunk. They are walking home because they're too drunk to ride their damn horses. And they pass a Hindu temple for the god Hanuman, who's the monkey god. They decide, one of their friends decides to go in. This is Fleet, who's super drunk. And he goes in, they're in the middle of a ceremony. They're praying to Hanuman. He goes up to the statue. He pulls the cigar out of his mouth, and he makes a burn mark right on the statue. And he's like, oh, very good. Look at that. Very nice.
Mark of the beast.
Mark of the beast. Don't you love it?
I love our British accents.
Yeah, they're real bad. And then a priest comes out and puts a curse on him. They leave. They go back. They go to sleep. They wake up. And Fleet is acting peculiarly. He is complaining of an itchy spot where the priest touched him. He has this mark on his skin. He's eating pork chops that are super underdone. They're raw. They're still bloody.
He can smell blood through the marketplace.
He can smell blood through the marketplace. The horses are terrified of him.
Dogs won't come near him.
Dogs won't come near him. He is going out in the garden and he's rolling around in the dirt and he wants to be part of the earth and he wants to go out walking in the woods all night. Eventually it gets to the point where he's stark raving and he's acting like an animal. They call the doctor. Doctor says, oh, he has rabies. He's going to die. And they decide, well, maybe it's something more. Then they find out the Silverman has followed them back to their house. They torture him and say, you put a curse on him. We need you to undo this. The Silverman undoes it, and that's the end of the story. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about some structure and some themes, the structure's pretty simple. It's just basically our unnamed narrator just recounting the tale. Not a lot to talk about there or for structure. Themes we got into a little bit while we were talking about Kipling. Big one being imperialism. A lot of people say that the intention of this story is to show Fleet, who is the guy who makes the mark of the beast on the Hindu statue, being the United Kingdom or Great Britain, and the Silverman or the Hindu priests being India, and him making that mark on their statue and disrespecting them being how disrespectful the United Kingdom was to India by making them a colony. What are your thoughts on the theme of imperialism in the story?
I thought it was pretty clear cut that that's what he was going for. I've been proven wrong in the past, or at least people have told me I'm wrong. You got this British dude, he comes in, he's desecrating a holy site for no other reason than he's
wasted.
He's fucking drunk. And, when you're drunk, sometimes you do things that you wouldn't do in your right mind, but sometimes how you really feel also comes out. And that's more of the vibe I got, was he just doesn't respect this religion or these people. And then you get this leper coming out.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this quote-unquote Silverman is a leper.
Yeah. And, I'd be more concerned about a leper touching me than getting cursed. I'm gonna be straight with you guys. Like, I've seen leprosy. It looks super gross and bad for me.
I think it's bad for anybody.
Yeah, so, but you get this leper come out and, curses him. And, I suppose you could say that he honky voodoos up the Indian religion. But at the same time, you could do that with any sort of symbolism, with whatever you want to talk about. When you're adding mysticism to a story, there's always going to be something that might be read badly. But it very much came across as these Indians feel insulted by the British dude, and this is what they're going to do to you.
They make a comment, the other two characters who are Strickland, who's a British cop, and our narrator, who's kind of a neutral party. Mm-hmm. They comment that I can't believe they didn't kill you. Like, they were within their rights to lawfully murder you for what you did.
Yeah.
And all they did was touch you.
You were in stabbing distance.
You were well within stabbing distance.
We were all within stabbing distance.
They should have mauled us, he said, that being Strickland, instead of mewing at us, which is like a meow, meow sound that otters make.
Yeah.
I wonder what they meant. I don't like it one little bit.
I heard mewing, and I thought they were talking about the Pokemon. They also talk about a law where he could be prosecuted for disrespecting the religion.
So going into another theme is lycanthropy. This is one of the earliest stories that discusses this, but this is commonly thought of as a werewolf story. But is it a werewolf story?
I wasn't quite sure. They do mention specifically like a wolf howl.
Yes.
And so I was picturing something like the Wolfman in my head.
The room smells of dog.
Yeah. I think you could get away with calling it a werewolf story.
Most people refer to it as one, and of one of the early ones too, or at least from like a popular author.
It would at least be, if you didn't consider it a werewolf story, you have to at least admit that it laid the groundwork for werewolf stories.
Could you read this as like nothing supernatural? Like the doctor thinks he has rabies, and other than I think the only thing is that the Silverman like cures him by touching him. Other than that, could it have been rabies, or is there another explanation that's not supernatural?
I guess. I thought it was pretty straightforward that they were viewing something that they didn't completely understand. I also read it as the Indian doctor recognized what it was, but was just like, yeah, no, he deserves to die. Like someone from the temple came down and went, hey, listen, we turned him into a dog guy. We need you to sign that. And in the story, they kept calling it hydrophobia. I had to look up what that meant.
It's rabies.
I was like, the fear of water.
No. The only reason I know that is because that's what they call rabies in Old Yeller.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I had to look it up. I was like, because I hear hydrophobia, I immediately think water.
There's actually a lot of talk of disease. So aside from hydrophobia, leprosy.
Leprosy.
Yeah, those are things that come up a lot as themes in this story. And religion is a big one too, like specifically Christianity versus Hinduism. We have a whole section devoted to that, so we're going to talk about that as we get to it.
Yeah.
We are going to jump into characters. There's not a lot to talk about with characters here. This is one, it's very short. Mm-hmm. Two, it's very plot driven. But we have a few groups of characters here. So we have our three main British characters. There's the narrator, Fleet, who is the drunk friend who gets us into some shit, and Strickland, who is the more level-headed one. He's the British cop. He seems to know more about the Indian people, to be more respectful of them, at least more so than Fleet. Not that that's saying a lot. And then the narrator, who's kind of like the neutral party between the two. He's more of a kind of just an observer, kind of a Greek chorus. Mm-hmm. He's just relating what he's seeing to us, the audience. So what do you think of the characters in this book?
Fleet really reminded me of some of the stupid shit we used to do in college.
Yeah.
I could very much see us doing something similar, just because we thought it would be funny.
I thought of something we did that tops the list we said earlier, but it's so bad I'm not even going to say it.
Just edit it out. Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And we weren't even drunk. We were completely sober.
We were just trying to get something spooky to happen.
Yeah, I'm not including this in the show. Make sure it gets edited out. So yeah, the three of them kind of form one leans hard in one direction of being like totally disrespectful to the natives. One's more sympathetic, and then we kind of have our neutral narrator in the middle.
Yeah.
But what about the Silver Man?
I think that he would be very cool to see in like an adaptation. There's not a lot to his character. He mostly just exists to put a curse on somebody. I love the way he's described. I love the prose around that.
Without any warning, a Silver Man came out from a recess behind the image of the god. He was perfectly naked in that bitter, bitter cold, and his body shone like frosted silver, for he was what the Bible calls a leper. You mean like one of them big spotted white cats? I'll be terrified if I just messed up a Hindu statue and a big old leper comes out at me. Row, row.
I think we should do a fan film of Mark of the Beast, but we should make it a bunch of redneck tourists go through India. We'll modernize it.
Well, you could also do, what could be a fun Mark of the Beast is like, maybe like some people from California or New York come to West Virginia and desecrate the
Mothman statue.
I was going to say a WVU thing, but yeah. And then the natives get pissed and put the Mark of the Beast on them.
But they start to get a little pepperoni roll tattoo over their heart.
And it's like they wake up the next morning. Do we have any Mountain Dew? I'm just like craving Mountain Dew. I want it flat. Yes, I need flat Mountain Dew to drink. Oh. And I need stale pepperoni rolls.
Where's my skull? Okay.
I could see that being something we make and then only we think it's funny, but we think it's hilarious.
That happens to us a lot.
White as snow. Also, he had no face, because he was a leper of some years standing, and his disease was heavy upon him. We stooped to haul fleet up, and the temple was filling with folk who seemed to spring from the earth, when the Silver Man ran out under arms, making a noise exactly like the mewing of an otter. Actually...
You have a lovely reading voice.
Thank you. YouTube real quick. Otter mewing.
Now just imagine that coming out of a silver leper.
He has no face. He's literally falling apart.
The Red Skull has come to curse you.
And later in the story, when Fleet's like taking a turn for the worse, they realize that the Silver Man is making laps around their house, mewing at Fleet like through windows and stuff to antagonize him. How fucked up is that?
I think it's kind of funny. What's that line from Joker? You get what you fucking deserve.
Yeah. And then our last character is the Doctor, who, I mean, you've already dropped the bomb fan theory. He knew what was happening. He's like, fuck this.
Yeah.
The other theory is he knew what was happening, and he tried to cover it up so he wouldn't be part of it. That's rabies. I'm gonna go. Bye, guys. Okay, so jumping into scary shit. This is considered an all-time classic horror short story. In terms of being scary, what are your thoughts?
It does an okay job. It probably would have scared me if I haven't read so much fucked up shit at this point in my life.
I think that, at the time, this was written in the early 20th century.
Yeah. I
can imagine families getting together and reading this story around the fire and thinking it was super scary.
And then there's strangers in a strange land vibe. That kind of stuff spooks me out too. I can imagine being in India and some dude coming up to me mewing at me being just terrified. Like, did I do something racist? I apologize.
I can definitely imagine the audience this was written for being white people in Great Britain in the early 20th century thinking being out at night, unarmed, alone in India, and being confronted by the native people would definitely be a scary situation.
Especially a leper. A leper in any situation I would find kind of terrifying.
And leprosy, it's still something that is considered scary in 2022, but in the early 1900s, people didn't understand the disease at all. I mean, people really thought that people were dying of leprosy because they were being forsaken by God. And
like this is the face we would have had.
yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. I mean, leprosy is a scary, scary disease.
Yeah, that's not great.
So yeah, the Silverman, I think, is probably the spookiest part of it, because he kind of represents the curse. He represents the stranger in a strange land aspect of it, as you said, and he's a leper on top of all that.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of like super antagonistic to the point where he like follows them home and is trying to rile Fleet up.
We live in West Virginia, so I don't think either of us are particularly all that religious. But
No.
religion is something that a lot of people around here take super seriously. But I think I'm not going to say it is true across cultures because I'm not an anthropologist. But it seems true from my perspective that it's something that everyone in their little bubbles takes super seriously. So to the Brits, this seems like some sort of evil curse. To the Indian people, this is retaliation for mocking your god. This is the equivalent of the Silverman's like the church picketer that showed up the next day because somebody made a joke about Jesus at a PTA meeting.
Do you think the Silverman is justified in what he does to Fleet?
I think that it probably would have been more appropriate to, because they straight up mentioned there's a law they could have prosecuted him under. I think that would have been more appropriate. I don't know if I would say he's justified, but justified and understanding aren't the same thing. I understand why he did it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, obviously what Fleet did was not cool. You don't walk into somebody's church and take a dump on their altar.
Yeah. Don't piss in this church. You know. So, but I do understand it. I even understand the antagonizing, because I've seen stuff like that from a strictly like a Western Christian perspective. People get super defensive.
Yeah.
And they'll start antagonizing if they feel insulted or they feel threatened.
Kind of feels like Twitter beef, where like the Silverman, so Fleet gets this really good Twitter burn on the Silverman, which is totally like inappropriate and out of line and a little racist and came out of nowhere. So the Silverman gets him back and gets him back good. But then the next day he goes over to Fleet's Twitter and just starts adding him like all over the place, trying to antagonize him when it could have just been done.
The stuff that I tried to do to Kevin Smith.
Exactly. I'm really bad about making social media like parallelisms. So another
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, it was fun. Another really spooky part about this story for me was the resolution. Like I said, the Silverman follows them home and tries to antagonize them. Strickland and the narrator figure out what's going on. They capture the Silverman and they take him into the bedroom. And what happens there is not fit for print, because the structure is that the narrator is kind of relaying this as if they were going to publish it in a newspaper. Whatever they do to the Silverman, he feels is not appropriate for them to say. Presumably, they torture him to get him to undo the curse on Fleet.
I ain't sure what you can do to a leper. I've been trying to imagine.
It's got to be bad.
It's got to. His toenails and shit are already falling off. You can't pry them.
It says that Strickland he puts his gun in the fire to heat up the barrel.
Huh.
I don't know. Do you like put a gun to somebody's head that's been heated in a fire so it's like burning them and threatening to shoot them at the same time?
That seems really bad for the gun. Maybe I'm putting too much thought into this.
I mean, he's a cop, though. He can just get another one.
That is true.
But yeah, I mean, like, that's a retaliation, too, though. So, like, Fleet desecrates their statue. Silverman puts a curse on Fleet and then continues to antagonize him. And then all over a mark on a statue, then the narrator and Strickland torture this guy. Presumably could have killed him.
And then they just come home with some blankets.
Yeah, they do. They give him blankets.
That's very British to me.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of spooky elements to this story: the rabies, the leprosy, the torture. Yeah, I think. So moving on to religion, just giving a little background on the Hindu god. It's Hanuman, the monkey god, which is as much description as he really gets in the story. But this is an actual deity in Hinduism. He's the Hindu god of wisdom, strength, courage, devotion, and self-discipline, which I think is kind of ironic because Fleet has none of these characteristics, really, and desecrates a god who represents all these things.
Yeah.
Hanuman is the son of the wind god Vayu and is a devotee of Rama. And if you know anything about Hinduism, Rama is one of the major deities. One of my favorite things about this book is the opening line where they say, basically, once you go so far east, the Christian god has no influence there. When you get to India, you're at the mercy of the gods of Asia. Except for in a few rare circumstances, Christ and the Christian God cannot help you. What are your thoughts on that?
From a strictly narrative perspective, it's shown to be true. Like, Jesus doesn't help them. They have to get the Hindu guy to undo his curse. It's not like they brought in a priest that exorcised him.
You know, that's what I thought.
Or even holy water, like...
The first time I read it, I thought they were going to get a priest to help them.
Yeah. So, honestly, it just reinforces that in a fist fight, the Indian gods are going to win.
Warning. Incoming sports metaphor.
At least when they're playing a home game.
Yeah. Home field advantage.
Based on what happens, we would say that first statement at the beginning of the book, that east past Suez, there is no God, that's basically true.
Yeah.
But if we're going to look at this from a Christian perspective, isn't that Jesus's whole thing, that nobody is so foregone that they can't be forgiven? And
the notion of repentance in Christianity often gets muddled, especially because the thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about is you actually have to show repentance. You have to show that you're sorry. And Fleet never does.
I want pork chops, bloody chops.
Yeah.
I want them underdone, running with red juice.
So from a Christian perspective, Jesus probably wouldn't heal this guy because he doesn't give a fuck.
I don't.
There's when Jesus is hanging on the cross, there's two people next to him. One of them's like, oh, if you're really the Son of God, get us down from here. And the other one's like, no, just please forgive me for this. And the one who asked for forgiveness gets to go to heaven, and the other one's just fucked.
Yep.
So, in this case, Fleet would be the dude literally mocking a god and getting punished for it.
All he did was put a cigar burn on the statue of a monkey god.
That monkey god is really cool. I play Shin Megami Tensei, and he is always in my party. Monkey god.
Hanuman, the monkey god.
I've read a little bit of Hindu mythology. Not a lot. I don't pretend to be an expert. I just think it's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, my knowledge of Hinduism comes mostly from, like, 7th grade world history.
Yeah, I like any sort of mythology. And, you know, there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain flair to Hindu religions that I really like. Like, you got the 1,000 million-headed cobras. You know,
actually, I did do more reading than I thought, because I read Osamu Tezuka's Buddha, which is pretty long, like a big long epic.
Yeah. And
there's a lot about Hinduism in that, so I actually did some... When I read that, I did more research, but that was 10 years ago or more, so... Like, in a straight-up, like, design point, I think the Hindu gods take a lot of this.
Yeah.
Like, they just look super cool.
Yeah,
Like, Jesus is a dude in a robe.
They're
Zeus is a
Jesus
dude in a
is
robe. But you start heading east and you get, like, here's Monkey God. Here's half woman, half man God. Here's...
Muhammad's a dude in a robe.
Yeah.
Buddha's a dude in a robe.
But Hindus are like, hey, here's a dude with an elephant head and 7 arms. And I'm like, man, these guys, they were creative.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to talk about with religion is that when you sat down to read this and you knew it was titled Mark of the Beast, did you think it was going to have anything to do with the passage in Revelations that talks about, quote unquote, the Mark of the Beast 666 referencing Satan? Or
No, I didn't even think of that at all.
I was just kind of surprised that there are like no references to Satan at all, considering it's called Mark of the Beast. But I guess the thesis of the story is that in Asia there is no Christian God, so why would there be the devil?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a polite way to say this. A lazier author might have done something like that. Like, or somebody who is more entrenched in their own culture's religion, like somebody that was, I don't know what Kipling's religious beliefs were. It seems like the easy way to write that story would be to include a priest or include allegories to Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, because it's kind of a werewolf story, but it's also kind of a possession story.
Yeah.
And that's definitely, mainly due to The Exorcist. That's when we hear a story of any kind of possession, you go to a religious figure.
Mm-hmm.
They did. It was a Hindu religious figure, and they tortured the shit out of him to get him to undo the curse, but...
Let that be a lesson to you. You want to undo a curse, just torture the person.
Okay, so this is interesting. Rudyard Kipling did not subscribe to any particular religion, but he was a deeply religious man. He believes in one absolute God and the divine purpose behind the creation of man. Although Rudyard Kipling uses a lot of Christian symbols in his work, he wasn't Christian. In some of his stories, he shows a unique insight into the redeeming power of love, which is the main pillar of Sufism, which is a subsect of Islam. He also accepts some Islamic precepts. However, he's not a Muslim. He was very empathetic to Buddhism and Hinduism, and always alludes to Hindu gods and goddesses, but he does not believe in Hinduism or Buddhism. Rudyard Kipling uses a lot of religious themes and motifs and symbols in his works, but he doesn't subscribe to a particular religion. It seems like his religious views were not well defined.
Yeah, they are nondescript.
Nondescript. So spiritual, but not necessarily like organized religion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where the fuck were we? I don't know.
We just got past Revelations, Kings and Koontzes.
Let's go to Kings and Koontzes. What's your king and your Koontz? And if this is your first episode with this is Props and Slops, your king and your Koontz.
Okay, my king is the leopard, the silver man.
The Silver Man.
I love his introduction. I love the fact that he's just fucking with them. And I like that he just is like, no, these guys came into my house. I'm gonna do this by my rules. And my Koontz, I think, if I'm remembering this right, was when they gagged the werewolf with a shoehorn.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, really?
I believe the quote is, which is surprisingly easy to do if you know how. Something like that.
And I'm sitting there and I'm trying to imagine putting a shoehorn inside the things from Dog Soldiers or even the Wolfman. I'm like,
or even just a guy's mouth.
I'm sitting there like, I would get fucking mauled. It just seemed goofy to me.
Yeah. So my king is probably just this like idea of being in a foreign land and being abandoned by your god. So be on your best behavior, because if you fuck up, you're on your own. And then my Koontz is probably just could have been a little longer. Could have had some instances of Fleet like terrorizing some people.
Could have had him murder somebody.
could have had him kill like one of the horses or
Yeah, something. It was a surprisingly non-bloody story.
no, it's more about like the atmosphere and the themes.
And I don't need a lot of blood, but I like a little bit of blood.
Yeah, that's probably just us being a product of our generation and the media we've been raised on.
Yeah.
Okay, so there isn't a Hollywood like adaptation, but there was a film version of this made in 2012, directed by Thomas Edward Seymour. I've not seen it. I've only seen the trailer. I'm going to show Daniel the trailer live on this episode, and we're going to get his reaction to it live. If you want to pause and watch the trailer, just go to YouTube, search Rudyard Kipling's Mark of the Beast trailer. It's on a channel called Brightly, and it's going to start. It's going to say NR not rated, but you will hear it here. So if you want to pause, go watch it. Go ahead.
All right.
Your gods and my gods. Do you or I know which are the stronger?
But if I draw that sheep by the finger of God, then the kingdom of God has come to you.
East of the Red River, some hold, the direct control of providence ceases. Man being there handed over to the power of the gods and devils of the forest. This theory accounts for some of the more unnecessary horrors of life in this forest. It may be
Okay.
stretched to explain this.
Just stop! That's the wrong way!
Wait, are you gonna be okay?
I have no idea.
That might have been the worst thing I've ever seen.
Thoughts?
I am not one of those people that are adverse to changes to the source material. I do like things that are closer to the source material, but sometimes changes are necessary or changes can actually be beneficial. I think that if you had to choose between doing something a little bit more true to the source material or making this, and those were your only two options, you may as well never have made it. That is how bad this looks.
I kind of want to find it and just like, it's almost like something we could like put it up on Facebook Live and watch it and stream it on Facebook and just have like people in the chat and get our like reactions right there.
Maybe give us some super chats because I want to be paid to watch that. First of all, I didn't see a single Indian person.
No, I don't believe it takes place in India. I think I'm guessing it.
And
I don't even know.
And I'm going to lay like claims of racism and stuff aside for a minute. Imperialism seems to be a super important theme to this story.
I believe it's the theme to the story.
So, if you cannot portray that theme, then I think you're better off not making it. What did I talk about? The lazy answer would have been using a priest. There's a priest using the cross, and the power of Christ compels you right in this trailer.
When you said that, I thought of this trailer, and I was like, oh, don't bring it up now. Don't bring it up now. Wait.
So they used the lazy answer.
So it's like they took out India, they took out Hinduism, they took out the themes of imperialism and kind of stripped it down to like a monster movie.
And if you can't, and I'm gonna be super straight with people. If you can't set your movie in India, I get it. That's expensive.
Yeah.
If you need to change the location, I get it. This is. You wanna know how you fix this? Super easy. You hire one Indian person, you make him a victim of a hate crime. I just fixed your entire budgetary issue. Now it can take place anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be like India specifically.
Yeah.
I mean, you could rewrite this to be about Native Americans and trashing a Native American shrine, and this could
Something,
be
yeah. There's a million other answers, and they seem to pick all the wrong ones.
And granted, this is judging based off of like a 60-second trailer.
Oh, I'm judging. I want the director's name. I want him on the podcast so I can tell. I want to start Twitter beef with him.
Thomas Edward Seymour.
Well, Thomas Edward Seymour, you're my new Kevin Smith.
He's probably more in your weight class.
I actually like Kevin Smith, but that was still super strange.
I don't. Screw you, Kevin Smith. All right, what would you like to see out of an adaptation of this story?
I would like it to be a period piece.
Yes.
And again, I'm the dude who went on a giant tirade about how I'm sick about hearing that H.P. Lovecraft is racist, because I get it. But at the same time, in this case, I'm like, you could probably do a little bit more with British imperialism. You could probably add a subplot to that.
Do you think that the reputation that Kipling has now would maybe prevent a movie about British imperialism being made because it might be seen as racist? Or
I think there's a few ways that you handle that. The first way is you hire an Indian director. Either somebody from actually India or someone with Indian heritage.
like a legit Bollywood director.
I would love to see a Bollywood version. That might actually at least be fun to watch.
You could get a Bollywood director and give him like a Hollywood budget.
Yeah, but you could play up the sympathies that might go underappreciated in the story proper. Like when they're torturing the leper, you portray that as the wrong answer. There's ways you can adapt the story to deal with those sorts of issues. At least in my opinion. Some people might try to get the movie stopped from being made. I would love to see more Ricky Tikki Tavi movies. I like The Jungle Book.
Yeah, I mean, Jungle Book's great.
So, sorry if that offends people. I like those stories, and I think there's rooms to talk about them more.
Did you see the live-action remake of The Jungle Book that they did a few years ago?
Mm-hmm.
The orangutan, King Louis,
Mm-hmm.
is terrifying. He looks super scary.
I remember seeing the snake in the trailer.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a spooky movie.
Yeah. I remember the really weird live-action Jungle Book movie that came out like years ago.
Yeah, I remember that too.
That was weird. I watched it a lot.
I can remember the VHS cover in my mind.
I love the monkey. I love that the snake was like a final boss.
I remember this. Like, I actually kind of remember this movie. I probably haven't seen it since 1997.
Let's watch this movie.
I bet it's better than the Mark of the Beast movie we just...
And you know what's really bad is I bet that was like somebody's dream project. I bet that was like the director's dream was to adapt that movie.
I mean, it is a great short story, so I could see like...
I have some dream adaptations I would love to do. The reason I don't do them is because I don't have the means. We got sidetracked again.
Okay, so we haven't... this is our second short story we've covered. The first one was Night Surf. Which is better? Night Surf by Stephen King or The Mark of the Beast by Rudyard Kipling?
That's actually kind of tough.
Not for me. I think Mark of the Beast kicks Night Surf's ass. I think Night Surf was not great.
Yeah. I think that the stuff that I liked in Night Surf really relied on me liking The Stand as much as I did.
Yeah, that's true.
Like as an independent short story, I don't think it would have worked at all. So yeah, I'm gonna have to put Mark of the Beast above that.
So for some further reading, Rudyard Kipling actually has a pretty large history or bibliography of horror short stories. He actually published an entire collection of horror stories. I've read one other one, My Own True Ghost Story, which is about an experience he had with a ghost. It's pretty good. It's not, I don't like it as much as The Mark of the Beast, but I do recommend it. And the other one that's pretty famous, which I haven't read, is The Phantom Rickshaw, which just sounds cool.
I like the title of that.
So we may cover this on another episode. I'd like to do...
The Phantom Rickshaw. That's a good title.
Yeah.
That's what we should adapt.
I would like to do more Kipling in the future,
Yeah.
so that might be something we come back to.
We'll add some Kipling.
Yeah, for sure. But as for what we have going on, we are off next week. We have talked about maybe surprising you with a bonus episode, maybe not, but we shall see. First week of April, Sunday, April 3rd, we're going to come at you with Gotham by Gaslight. The next week, April 10th, Gotham by Gaslight, the film adaptation. And then we are dropping our episode on our next novel, April 17th, which will be Stephen King's Firestarter. So you still have about a month to read that, which is plenty of time. It's not a super long book. The following week, we're going to cover the first Firestarter film from 1984 with my girl Drew Barrymore. And then May 1st, we begin It, where we'll be covering book 1 and the first interlude. Super excited to get into It.
Yeah. It is probably one of my favorite horror stories.
It is my favorite horror story. The miniseries was my favorite horror movie since I was like 11, something like that.
I'd have to sit and compile a list. It's hard, but it would definitely be in a contender.
Tell me more about how it's hard.
I mean, I can send you a picture of it.
Great, and then I can add that to my collage of Vladimir Putin.
If we add a little homoeroticism to the podcast, we might get more listeners.
I want like a fan-made AMV of JoJo openers, but it's Trump and Putin just being like super homoerotic, but dressed up fancy pretty.
I don't know if openers already exist, but fan art of them as JoJo characters already exists.
Of course, it exists. It is well known to every right-minded man that the gods of the heathen are stone and brass, and any attempt to deal with them otherwise is justly condemned. Stay scary, everybody.
Stay scary.
Well, that was horrendous. I would tell you boys good job, but the dryness of my sarcasm would likely evaporate all the moisture in both your bodies. Anyway, if you want to hear more of this, please subscribe to their YouTube channel by searching for The Horror of Babylon. You can follow them on Twitter at HorrorPod69. The Facebook page is under The Horror of Babylon. And on Instagram, these fools are The Horror of Babylon, one word. Reach their assuredly empty inbox at thehorrorofbabylonpodcast@gmail.com. You can also request their Discord server link via any other channel. And finally, if you are foolish enough to support this abomination financially, search for The Horror of Babylon on patreon.com. And God save your soul if you do.